Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, March 7th, 2025, and you are listening and possibly watching the TMI Show with me, Ted Rall, in New York, and Robby West in Montana, filling in for Manila Chan, who's at her secret undisclosed vacation destination. When I put in, I wrote up the show description. I used AI to compose it a little bit. And it said like she was vacationing in sunny climes, and I just decided to leave it like that. But let's just say that's not really. I mean, it could be sunny, but it's not. It's not. Let's just say she's not like in one of those places.
No, her weather's probably closer to what mine is right now.
I would say so. Yeah, I have another friend who just came back. Is coming back today from the same place, which is also very strange. It's kind of like, I mean, I had one I guess 3-month period where everyone I knew was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be away, I can't have drinks with you, I'll be in Baku. I'm like, who's going to Baku? I mean, it was like Azer, it's kind of like last year was Brat summer. It was like Azerbaijani summer for everyone. I mean, it's like, and no one would say like, what are you doing? Are you a CIA agent? Like, what's your story?
Well, they probably maybe just enjoy the views of the oil wells there in the Caspian Sea. I mean, that could be it. Or watching the big old pipelines coming through. Or maybe just want to go see the border between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Yeah, or Georgia. Yeah, no, I mean, I have
military tourism.
I did spend a day in Baku, and it was actually a fascinating day. And maybe we'll talk about that, but we do have some show to do. As we said, this is the TMI Show. We do news, politics, his lifestyle, culture, music. We haven't really done much music, but we should do music. Peter Wolf. I don't know if you know who that is. Do you know who Peter Wolf is?
Nope.
Do you know who the Jay Giles band was?
I know Johnny Cash, and I know who ain't. That's it for me.
Okay.
I am a Philistine.
So I was just reading in the Washington Post that Peter Wolf, former lead singer and wild man rocker of the 70s, he was the lead singer of the Jay Giles band, and they were known for such hits as "Na Na 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 Na," "My Baby Is the Centerfold." It's like "My Blood Runs Cold." Anyway, so you don't know. Anyway, the point is he's completely fallen off the radar. He was like one of the wild rockers of the 70s. He has a new autobio out, and it's meant to be quite good. He's trying to aim as high as Keith Richards did with his. Although I read the Keith Richards book, and it's all right. It's not as good as people say. But anyway, we're going to be talking today about history. Robby and I are both big historians, and so is our friend of the show, my best friend, Scott Stantis. He's coming on to join us down at the bottom of the hour, 26 minutes from now. So keep it here for him as well. And we're going to be talking about our favorite stories from history. I already know what I'm going to talk about, but mine's tied into a column that the Wall Street Journal just turned down, and I'm really annoyed about it because of the way it went down. It's basically like they forgot it. They were like, we're in such a my editor claims that he's in the heaviest news cycle, even worse than the week of 9/11. I'm like, I find that hard to believe, but that's what he claimed. And he basically, my piece got lost in the shuffle. So it's right now it's at the New York Times. They probably won't run it because I'm too far left for them. And but it's there. And then if they don't run it, I'll syndicate it next week. So and that's the subject. Anyway, I'm going to avoid the disclaimers about cursing and all that. You guys know all that. We're live here every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, and you know the rest. Be sure to like and follow the show. The Ted Manila Information Show starts now.
Or is it the Ted Robby Information Show?
I guess it's the TRI Show. It's true. All right, let's get into it. All right, imagine that you just heard the sound effect, and here's the news. President Trump convened a cabinet-level meeting Thursday. What's the difference between a cabinet-level meeting and just a cabinet meeting? I don't know. Anyway, a cabinet-level meeting, or maybe just a cabinet meeting, to tell the heads of the agencies that they are in charge of their agencies and departments, not Elon Musk. That, according to multiple sources. He said that he instructed his cabinet members to go first and look at the people they can cut in their own agencies, but keep the good people. keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. And it would be better if they were there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, because in 2 years they'll know the people better, Trump said. But I want them the best.
This shows that Trump listened to the show yesterday, because we discussed this with the judges and stuff. And so this shows that the orange man was listening.
That's right. So, Mr. President, thank you very much for your support. Please hit that subscribe button on the lower right-hand corner on Rumble. I'm pretty sure you watch on Rumble rather than YouTube. And
retweet us.
Yeah, no, oh my God. Yeah, we'll settle for a truth, for sure. But, I mean, we would prefer a re-X or whatever you call it. What is the verb for tweet now that it's an X? I have not heard anyone say. Like, at most you might say, oh, I did an X post, which sounds ridiculous. But no one says like, oh, I X'd this. Or
no, I just retweeted. Like, I had a guy yesterday, and he asked me where my moniker Putinbot Gaming comes from. And so I explained it. I have a video up on Rumble. So I posted it, and then I retweeted it. And the guy was just like, so you're dead naming. I said, correct, because I don't care about your feelings. I care about facts. So
right. Well, that's analogous to when I was constantly being called a certain thing, so I decided to own it back in 2010, and I wrote a book. I published a book that did pretty well called The Anti-American Manifesto.
Yeah, I've got it.
And the fascinating thing about writing a book called The Anti-American Manifesto is no one will ever call you anti-American again. No. It's like you own it. So if you're like if someone's calling you a POS, you should be like, get a T-shirt that says POS, and then everyone will stop calling you that. That's the power. That's the superpower.
I had someone dox me at my job. They called and accused me of being a white supremacist racist. They contacted the HR department at my job. And I was like, I said, well, of course. I said, well, with a name like Putinbot Gaming, how can you be anything else but that? I mean, you knew this when you hired me. So it is what it is.
It's very, very, very funny. So, I mean, look, I think it is true that I think that part of it is that, this pivot, I'm going to say, first of all, it speaks highly of Trump. He did make a mistake. I mean, allowing Musk to go in and fire a bunch of people that he didn't know anything about. And then he embarrassingly had to rehire them because the country couldn't run without them. So Trump's like saying, okay, well, you made this mistake. Mao Zedong famously said, fail again better, right? In other words, nobody's perfect. The important thing is to correct your mistakes when you make them. Of course, this was an extremely foreseeable mistake, honestly. But anyway, it's fixed. And I think do you think, Robby, do you think before we move on to the next thing, do you think that's at all a response to the court battles where all the judges are weighing in and basically telling Trump, you can't just, Musk can't fire people who don't report to him. He can only fire people who report to him.
Probably, but I mean, Andrew Jackson's not going to be who I'm going to pick for the bottom of the hour. But if I was president, I would say, okay, I would take a page straight of his book. Okay, so the court has made its ruling, now enforce it. I mean, that's how I would do it.
That will create a constitutional crisis. Of course, it wouldn't be the first time.
Be it. So be it.
Okay. Well, all right. I think it may have been part of the calculus. It may not have been.
Oh, I think you're 100%. I mean, Trump, at the end of the day, he's a businessman. He's used to dealing with judges and courts. He sues people all the time. It's what he does.
He's had thousands of cases, literally.
Yeah. I mean, so, yeah, I'm sure that he's, okay, the judge said this, whereas you have some jerk like me who says, okay, the judge said it. No, do something about it.
Yeah, and probably his lawyer, he went to his lawyers. It's like, okay, what can we do about these judges? And then the lawyers are like, I'm sorry, sir. There's, you're going to lose.
Pick a different hill to die on.
Right, exactly. And why hire lawyers if you don't listen to them? Apparently, agreed. I mean, I've had many lawyers say that their client, they were very surprised because I have this reputation, I think completely undeserved, really, of being obstinate and stubborn. I'm a lot of bad things, but I'm not pig-headed. And if someone's so lawyers are surprised that when I hire them, I'm like, I do what they say, and they're like, well, many clients just don't. I'm like, then represent yourself, right? Save some money. You don't need a lawyer if you're going to do your own thing.
Fortunately, I've never been important enough to ever need a lawyer. So that's a problem I've never had. Knock on wood.
Oh, it's to be avoided. One time I was sitting. Well, I'll tell that story another time. All right, let's move on.
Kind of like the clap then, right? Just stay away from it.
Let's keep going. Well, I was just going to say, no, I was outside the LA courthouse in one of my numerous countless hearings against the LA Times. And this guy standing next to me, and if you know the story about my lawsuit, I was thinking about jaywalking, and he goes, "Oh, you don't want to do that." And I started laughing, and I'm like, "Oh, I know." And then he's like, "Oh my God," he goes, "That place is the house of pain and misery." He said, "I spent 26 years working in there." And I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "At 26 years, everyone in there is just suffering." And it's true. I'm like, "So what do you do now?" He goes, "I write legal thrillers."
Yeah, there you go.
And I was like, "So you got out, you draw on your knowledge, you sit at home, and you have a nice view of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful thing." Anyway,
Do what you love.
yeah. Trump says he wants to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran now. He sent a letter off to the Iranians yesterday saying that he wants to talk. "I said, I hope you're going to negotiate because it's going to be a lot better for Iran," he said in an interview with Fox Business. I think they want to get that letter. The other, I don't know, though, with that crappy postmaster he's got that he appointed in his first term, they may never get that letter. The other alternative is we have to do something because you can't let another nuclear weapon, like another nuclear weapon, do what? Do the hokey pokey? I don't know. Anyway, the letter appeared to have been addressed to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The White House did not immediately respond to a request about it, Reuters says. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov, discussed international efforts to resolve the situation surrounding Iran's nuclear program, and by nuclear program, we mean their nuclear power program, with the Iranian ambassador, Kazim Jalali, that according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. So this was a loose end from the first administration. He had wanted to get something done on this matter and to have a rapprochement, and maybe he had even talked about having normalization of relations with Iran, something we haven't had since the hostage crisis in the late 70s.
This is going to piss Israel off to
and
no end.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm totally on team. We talked about this yesterday. Trumpism is a hodgepodge, but on foreign policy, I tend to be very much on his side. And he's like, "I'll talk to anybody. I want to make peace. I want to do business." I'm like, "Yay, yay, yay. Go Donald." And this is a ridiculous situation. I mean, Iranians and Americans are also temperamentally very similar people. It's startling when you meet them, whether it's here or there. It's just like how similar they are. Their tone, they resonate at the same frequency. They're sarcastic in the same exact way. They're kind of like our soul brothers, and like we should be hanging with them. And we used to until the Shah was overthrown, and we really screwed that up in a big way. I mean, Ayatollah Khomeini, not to be confused with Khamenei, he wanted to have good relations with the U.S. and we weren't interested. We decided we were going to do our Cold War bullshit, and so now hopefully this isn't just about a nuclear nuke deal but that would be fine. It would be a nice start. But I think we should have exchange of ambassadors. We should reopen our embassies in both countries. Iranians should be able to visit here for tourism. We should be able to visit there. I've been to Iran. It's fantastic. There's a lot to see. It's so great. And the food is so good.
It's an ancient country. I mean, if you're a history nerd like me, I would love to go there and go see the old Zoroastrian temples. And that for me would be awesome. So,
no, it's amazing. No, and the temples are amazing. So, and Iran's cool. I mean, it's like, it's well worth it. It's also very, very modern. It's basically up to European standards. So, although there's some quirks, I went to Mashhad, which is a holy city in northeastern Iran, and the hotel was kind of like not that great because my tour guide was kind of a jerk, and he gave me a cheap hotel room, but it had a Bakelite phone. I was like, whoa, I bet that's a blast from the past. And it worked too,
Hey, if I was single, I would either be trying to get myself either a Iranian wife or a Kazakh wife. I can't decide which. Oh, yeah. They're both beautiful.
That's true. The Iranians probably are nicer So if you care about that
Nice is good. Nice is good.
Nice is good. Yeah.
American pretty women, nice.
It's hard to find nice in America, but anyway,
I lucked out. I got one of the few remaining ones.
That's good, because otherwise, we'll go full circle. That's how you'll end up hiring your first attorney if that doesn't work out.
God, man, so, we've been married. It'll be 19 years this year. It's crazy.
Well,
she's been putting up with me for that damn long. She's got to be a nutcase.
As long as you have that attitude, you'll probably keep going. All right. U.S. job growth picked up in February, and the unemployment rate, however, went up to 4.1%. But growing uncertainty over trade policy and deep federal government spending cuts could erode the labor market's resilience in the coming months. Non-farm payrolls went up by 151,000 jobs last month after rising by a downwardly revised 125,000 in January, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast payrolls advancing by 160,000 jobs after a previously reported 143,000 gain in January. Estimates had ranged from 30 to 300,000 positions. The rise in unemployment was from 4.0 to 4.1%. So it was just a tick up, but it's ominous because basically unemployment definitely seems to be going up fast, and hiring's not able to keep up with it. But it seems that economists are attributing most of the uptick in unemployment to DOGE and the federal government workers who've all got laid off in the last 6 weeks or so. The report was the first under Trump's watch. The Trump administration's back and forth trade policy is making it hard for businesses that deal internationally to plan ahead. Business and consumer confidence have plunged like a stone since January, erasing all gains notched in the aftermath of Trump's election win, of course, in November. So I think there's some storm clouds on the horizon. We talked to Aquiles Larrea yesterday. We talked to him about a week ago, and the first time he was kind of optimistic, at least for the foreseeable short future, right? He's saying, like, look for trouble maybe next year, which could hurt the Republicans in the midterms if the Democrats succeed in doing something that they've never succeeded in doing since 1974, which is nationalizing midterm elections. It's hard to do. Republicans did it in 1994. And I don't think Democrats even had a plan in 1974. It was just Watergate, and everything was a shit show. So they were just like, fuck all you Republicans, and they all voted no on all of them. But it's been a long time.
I think this is all fear porn. I don't trust the numbers. I mean, for example, if you work 3 part-time jobs, that's considered 3 jobs. And so you have a lot of retailers that are laying off. Joann's Fabric is going away. I mean, sure. I mean, some feds got the axe, but I think what it is,
those are real jobs.
Oh yeah, they're real jobs. But I think though what's happening, I think the reason why you're seeing this uptick in numbers is all the part-time jobs that are going away that are counted as employed, when in actuality you're working like 8 hours a week. So I don't trust the numbers. I think it's fear porn.
I mean, it could. I mean, the thing is, it's also. I mean, I guess I don't trust the overall optimism. I mean, I don't believe unemployment's ever been as low as 4%. It's just not. No. I think real unemployment is closer to 30% or 25%. It's like we talked about this before, and we could get into it in more detail at some point with an economist. But it's crazy, right? Like the revelation that if you work 1 hour a week, that's an odd job. That's a kid shoveling a driveway during a snowstorm.
I mean, that's literally what I do.
That's an odd job. That's I mean, that's not a job. I would say, I mean, honestly, I think if you're not working 35 hours a week, you shouldn't be counted as fully employed. Or let's just say, I don't even know if you could do a la carte, pro rata. Like if you work half time, is that 0.5 jobs? I mean, it's not meaningful, right? Like to me, job is an integer. It's zero, it's binary. You're either employed or you're not. Elon Musk is no more employed than I am. It's like, and if you're just, I mean, if you're making 30 hours, if you're working 30 hours a week and that's not enough to pay your bills, are you fully employed? Unless, of course, you could conceivably be making more than enough money to make it. I don't know. Maybe it should be based on salaries. How much money you make.
I don't know. It's
the number of people who make over a set amount.
Well, it's all crap. Just like, the CPI. The CPI says, well, inflation's going down if you ignore things like food, rents, cost of housing,
Fuel.
energy. So the things that you need to live, if you just ignore that, inflation's looking great. It's
Right.
all crap. It's all BS. I don't trust these
It
numbers
is.
at all.
It is BS. I mean, and there's this whole thing about like if a consumer product that is part of the 80,000 items that go into the calculation of the supermarket basket of consumer goods, right? In the event that is the case, those people are, it's if they they look at one item like a TV, for example, and if that TV and they're like, and let's say the price of the TV has gone up from $300 to $400, they don't say, oh, this is a 33% price increase, unless it's the same exact TV. But let's say,
Right.
but the new TV has a new feature, right? Like now it's a smart TV or whatever. It's like, oh, but this is a different product. So they don't consider that to be a price hike. And it's like, I mean, I can see kind of what they're saying, but to me, that's not how consumers view things. Consumers are like, I want a TV. And it's also not like it's even an option when you go to like Best Buy. It's not like they have the old crappy non-smart TV that you can buy. Those are gone, right?
Yeah.
So you can't say like, oh, I pay $130 for a TV that doesn't have any internet stuff on it. That's not an option.
No, if you want that, you have to go to a thrift store. I mean, that's
right, exactly.
I mean, that's what you do.
That is right. That's exactly right. And that's a completely different thing. I mean, look, I have some sympathy for the feds. It's hard to calculate these things, but
yeah, I have no sympathy for them. They're a bunch of lying dogs.
Lies, and damn statistics, they call it. Morgan Geyser
for president.
I'm very curious. Oh, well, he's asleep. He's asleep right now and doing no harm. Morgan Geyser, one of the two 12-year-olds at the time, I don't know if you remember this case, who said that they attacked their friend in order to please a fictional character called Slender Man, will be released from a psychiatric hospital, a judge said, following a hearing on a new petition to stop that release. Geisner, this has happened 10 years ago. She's now 22. She'll be released from Winnebago Mental Health Institute, according to the judge. A new hearing in which a proposal for plans on Geyser's release has been laid out, has been set for the end of the month. In January, several psychologists who worked closely with her testified and said that she was prepared to be released under supervision. But last week, prosecutors objected, saying that she had quote-unquote violent communication with a man outside the facility and read a book in the facility with the themes of sexual sadism and murder. Of course, one might wonder why she had access to such a book inside the facility. I mean,
yeah, in a controlled environment.
Isn't that more on them than on her? You know, it's like the three doctors who evaluated her earlier this year testified that she's well enough to be released and said that the new allegations brought by the prosecutors don't change their opinion. So here's what happened. Back in 2014, Anissa Wire and Geyser lured their friend, whose name was Peyton Leutner, also a 12-year-old girl, to the woods in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where Geyser stabbed their friend Leutner 19 times while Wire watched. Geyser and Wire left Leutner alone in the woods, injured and bleeding. She managed to pull herself to safety. She was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, but fortunately survived. If the knife had gone the width of a human hair further, she wouldn't have lived, according to Dr. John Kellerman, who operated on her later that day, told ABC News back in 2014. Do you remember this case?
I do. Yeah,
it was fascinating, right? I mean, it was about like basically internet hysteria. It's like, whether someone who is of that age is fully, able to, really understand like what what they're doing and their actions.
The answer is yes.
Well, I'm not. I mean, there's a lot of studies that say the opposite to that, right? I mean, a lot of studies show that, for example, there have been children who killed their parents. There was, and then like they asked the police, "Oh, can you let me go home now? My parents are waiting for me." And it's like, but you just killed them. It's like, but they're waiting for me. They're going to be really upset if I don't get home. I'm past my curfew. Yeah. I mean, these are clearly kids who did not understand the permanence of their actions.
I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, are people nuts? Yeah. But the exception, though, proves the rule. I mean, most people, they're born with a moral compass. You know that stabbing your friend is not exactly something that you would do. It's not a loving act. And luring your friend into the woods to knife her, to kill her. I mean, there was some planning that was involved there.
To please an internet meme. Slender Man was an internet meme.
No, if I was that judge, that person would have been hung till dead. I mean, there would have been no release. They're done.
I mean, the thing is, though, I mean, like, there's the God, what's that film? The Australian Beautiful Creatures, right? It's an old indie film, and it's basically tells the true story of these two girls who kind of like had a quasi lesbian relationship. They were teens. They worked themselves into a frenzy, and they decided to be free, to kill one of their sets of parents. And I mean, it's basically like, you know, you really, the center of your brain that determines judgment isn't fully formed until you're 25 years old, right? So if we assess criminality based on state of mind, and we say, okay, you are going to be, you can't really be held accountable if you don't really know what you're doing. Like, let's just say, for example, you were possessed by a demon. If you could prove such a thing, a demon takes you over, makes you kill someone. Yeah. Are you really a murderer? Like, no, you're not. The demon used you to kill someone.
No, I get what you're saying, and it's just in the book of Mark in the Bible, it's full of stories of people being demon possessed, that kind of thing. Something happened, something was wrong for you to be possessed anyway in the first place. If you want to go that way, at the end of the day, though, it's a metaphysical thing, and you can't prove if someone is demon possessed or not. Like, for example, I'm a Christian. You believe that I pray to a fictitious sky man who doesn't exist. I mean, that's a fact of life. I can't prove to you, and you can't prove to me. It's a matter of faith. It's a matter of opinion.
Right. Correct.
What we can agree, though, is that as society, we have rules. It is wrong to call up your friend. Like, if I called you, say, "Hey, Ted, come on over here to Montana. I'm going to take you up to the mountains," and then I sacrifice Clovis. That's a premeditated act. I would deserve to be punished for that.
Well, first of all, you're over 25. But
am I though?
Your judgment
center
is fully formed.
No, hold on.
No, let's say you could be diagnosed as schizophrenic, and like voices that seemed like they were coming from outside were ordering you to do that. Sure. I mean, are you really responsible?
Well, hey, if you could be transgender, if you could change your gender at any time that you want, if you could change your race, trans race is now a thing. I could be trans ageist. I could be whatever age I want to be. I could deny reality, and then working in that state of mind, I can do the hell I want because I'm now a minor because I say I am. That's the problem.
So you're saying you're a trans kid?
100%. I run, and for my proof, I'm going to show you because I'm going to submit Putinbot Gaming as my proof. I play video games online for fun, and I make some money off of it. So yes, I am a trans kid, and so
you and a quarter of the population.
Oh, it's fun.
All right, so we still have a headline to go, but I'm going to pop in Scott in as sort of a prequel. Hey, Scott.
Yes,
because it's about history.
Howdy, Scott.
All right, well, I'll introduce Scott. Here's Scott.
You're
Scott
not Manila, are you identifying as Manila?
He's identifying as Manila.
He's
a Manila.
I am. I've decided.
Manila.
I decided I am going to be. I'm going to be an Asian woman who's pasty white in a dim Montana day.
Okay. Now, I'm going to introduce Scott for people who don't know who he is. Scott Stantis is an acclaimed, I asked the AI about this bio, is an acclaimed American editorial cartoonist and creator of the syndicated comic strip Prickly Study since 2009. He has served as the editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, following a distinguished career with newspapers like the Birmingham News, the Orange County Register, and the Arizona Republic. His conservative-leaning cartoons, syndicated to over 400 papers via Tribune content agency, reflect this self-described contrarian stance. All right, let's go straight into this history-based. This is consistent with the theme of today's show. Where are you? Okay, yes. Sorry, I scrolled. Traffic ground to a halt at one of France's busiest train stations earlier today after an unexploded World War II bomb weighing more than 1,000 pounds was uncovered just north of Paris, causing travel chaos that extended across the English Channel. The bomb was discovered in the Saint-Denis suburb during overnight work on the tracks that lead into the Gare du Nord, a major Paris transit hub that serves northern France and other parts of Europe, including Britain. That's where the Channel train goes from. The bomb was discovered around 3:30 in the morning, about a mile and a half from the Gare du Nord, the company said. The workers were landscaping at a bridge renovation site when an earth-moving machine revealed the bomb, which had been buried about 6.5 feet underground. It's about 3 feet long and includes more than 400 pounds of explosive material. Travel notice indicated that extensive earthworks were necessary to safely defuse it. Traffic on high speed and commuter railways was stopped for hours. All Eurostar trains that connect Paris to London, Brussels, and Amsterdam were canceled, stranding travelers at the Gare du Nord, which served more than 226 million people in 2023. It's not uncommon in Europe for construction workers to come across unexploded ordnance from the conflicts that tore the continent apart during the 20th century. And the French railway company, SCNF, I believe it's called, said that the area in which the latest bomb was found was well known for its World War II remains. So,
and the French immediately surrendered. I just want to bring that up.
I was waiting for that joke.
Well, we're both French. We're French. We can say that.
In defense of the French, I know they got their asses kicked in 1940, but they lost as many people in 6 weeks as the U.S. lost in Vietnam in the better part of 12 years. And we never stop whining about it. Okay. Like 58,000 people, 10,000 of whom died in car accidents, by the way. 48,000 people died in combat in Vietnam. Like over all those years, the French lost more than that in 6 weeks. I mean, it's not like they weren't fighting. They just lost.
Yeah, they lost. I mean, yeah, it's fair to say but I mean, that's on the heels of the Franco, not Prussian War. Yeah, Prussian War when in 1871. That was how can I put that? A mistake.
Yes, that's true. It did not go well.
No, it's pretty much the French going, well, we have the uniforms.
Funny story on how funny it is, but my granddaddy, he lied about his age. He volunteered and he went to a fight in France during World War I before the United States got involved. And the little village that his unit was supposed to be in, I kid you not, it was called the Gray Brigade because they're all Southerners, and they flew Confederate battle flags over their trenches.
That must have been confusing for the Germans.
Oh, it blew their minds. They had no idea what the hell was going on. And but the women of the village, they got together to the church, and my brother, he's got the record. He has this old wax cylinder record. And it's this woman singing in France that you will find Dixieland in France. I kid you not.
That is so fun. I'm not familiar with that aspect of history. It sounds like, well, obviously you are, Robbie, but Ted, are you? I mean, why were they drawn to fight other than their kids and they're morons and they think war is awesome? But what was the motivation for your grandfather to go?
Because the South was still economically devastated after the War of Northern Aggression. And so he wanted to go overseas. A big part of it was we want to show that we are loyal Americans, that we are American, because his grandfather was a Confederate soldier. I've got his sword. And so that was a big part of it. Just wanted to show that, I am a patriotic American.
But the U.S. didn't get involved in the war at that point. We weren't in the war until 1917.
Yeah, correct. But whenever I asked my granddad about it, it's because the pay was great. You paid $10 a month to go fight for the French.
As a volunteer.
Yeah. And so he lied about his age.
I guess you're a mercenary at that point.
Yes, he was like 12 years old. He lied about his age.
Jesus.
Just shipped on over and had a Lee Enfield rifle, and he said that if you go up shooting rabbits and squirrels with a rifle, shooting Germans ain't that big of a deal.
He's lucky he came home. Did he come home?
He did. He
Yeah.
said one of his he said one of his friends. So one of his friends picked up a dud mortar going to the bomb thing. He thought it was great, and it went off, blew his arm off. So it's just, I mean, it's just stupidity, Darwinism. It's alive and well.
Speaking of stupidity, my great grandfather Jean-Marie Lecoeur, he was from Brittany, which is this part of France that sticks out, as you guys know, it's the westernmost part of France, the pointy part that goes towards England. Anyway, that is an economically and politically disadvantaged and discriminated a part of France. It's like the South here. They basically, or the Midwest. People just don't. Paris doesn't care about it. They didn't like those people. So when the war started in 1914, they sent trucks out to Brittany to basically press gang the way that the Ukrainians are doing now, just grabbing people off the streets, dragging them onto trucks, and dragging them off to the front line. Well, Jean-Marie, he's at the market, buying some tubers, and next thing you know, he's been bundled off to fight the crowds. Now, under French law, if you have kids, they can't do that. Okay, so in fact, you're not even allowed to volunteer. They won't have you. And he had five. He had 5 kids. So his wife finds out all about it. And it's like, well, there's no bureaucracy like French bureaucracy. Elon Musk couldn't make a dent there. Okay, there's no way. So this worked. So she worked her way through the system, and meanwhile he's fighting every day. So finally, someone in Paris is like, okay, all right, send this guy back home. Stamps a paper, and so his Jean-Marie's commanding officer calls him in to his tent and says, okay, listen, you're going home tomorrow, but in the morning we've got a big offensive, and after the offensive, you get on the train, you go back to your wife and kids. So of course, obviously, what happened, right? So yeah. So at that point, when he was expected to come home, instead the notice of all the war dead was posted on the church, and his name was on it, and then everyone in town knew what had happened. And I met a guy who was a little kid when that happened. He was 92 years old, and he remembered it like it was yesterday. And he was like, it was a scandal. It was like, even the mayor was like absolutely ashamed of the Republic and was afraid to go and talk to the wife and tell her. And anyway, it was just like, and then, so after that, it was a double tragedy, because the commanding officer knew that he was going to be court-martialed for disobeying a direct order. Like, no one said, use him tomorrow and send him the next day. They were like, send him back, right? That's it. So he committed suicide. So that's my World War I story.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's not a bad one.
Yeah. Do you have one, Scott?
I do. Both my grandmothers were living in France during World War II, and one of them lived in occupied France. I know this is a podcast, so I can use foul language, but I can especially cuss in French. But Le Salboche, I thought Germans were. Did you see Ted's reaction? He knows what it means.
I have no idea.
Le Salboche is dirty. Bush is
Kraut.
German, but it's not
dirty
German.
Kraut. Dirty Kraut.
Yeah. And that's even a very nice translation. Mm-hmm. I thought Germans, until I moved to Wisconsin when I was 13 years old, were called. I thought that was the name of the people, was Le Salboche, because that's all they were referred to. Because my grandmother was in a village that was taken over by the German forces, and they took every able-bodied male, young, down to the age, I believe, of 7, and cut off their right hand. So they couldn't fire a rifle. Although I guess it never occurred to them that they could use their left hands and use the stump to hold the barrel. But that was, yeah. So we, people asked, do I live in a bigoted house? I really didn't. My father was very enlightened, especially for a white dude in 1960s America. Sure. And without being, weird and squishy and hippie-ish, he was just practical. He said, people are people, look at their merit, and then, go forward. But the one thing I always had I had a hard time with is Germans, because, they show up to my family's house every once in a while back in the home country. So yeah, so Le Salboche, look it up. It's, and when my father's mother immigrated to the United States in the 1920s, she saw Versal, and which is, she says, why are they advertising that? Because it's a rough spelling for, how would you say it in French, Ted? For very dirty.
Yes, very, very dirty.
Very dirty. So she's taking the train from New York to Chicago, and there's all these signs that say for sale. She's going, why are they telling me this? I mean, I can see it. It's a filthy country, but especially coming through the stockyards of Chicago, I can imagine her thoughts.
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Well, I loved it. And
that's sort of like Des Moines. You know that story about why Des Moines is named Des Moines?
No.
So French explorers were traveling up the river where the city of Des Moines now is, and they were east of there, and they were traveling with an Iroquois language guide, and so the French were like, so what's up ahead? And they said, Des Moines. And it's like, so they decided to name the place Des Moines, right? So then only later
I did not know that
of Iroquois. Well, this is the story. So only later have Iroquois language experts determined that was the word for shithead. So Des Moines literally means those shitheads.
I wonder, Ted, you might know, Scott, how you're talking about how the French are cut off the right hand of the Germans.
No, I wonder if that's the Germans cut off the right hands of the French.
Yes.
Oh, it's the other way around. Because I wonder if that was it couldn't be a throwback, because back in the 100 Years' War, if the French would capture an English archer, they would cut off these two fingers. They couldn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's exactly the same thing.
And
exactly.
So I wonder if that's
exactly the same thing. So you talk about history, and this is what I love about history is when I talk to students about this and their eyes glaze over, and I say, no. First off, history is almost always, when I was a kid, and Ted can attest to this, that our age was always taught by the varsity football coach, right, who could not give two craps about history. But history is so human. I draw for the Chicago Tribune. Chicago, people aren't aware or many aren't, that word is actually the Indian word for the stinky onions that grew in the area.
Really?
So you know how this went down.
Mm-hmm.
Europeans show up. There's a sandbar where Chicago is today, a big sandbar, and they run into a group of Native Americans, and they go, what do you call this place? And the Indians look at each other and go, what? I don't understand what they're saying. And of course, the Europeans went, what do you call this place? And they're pointing at the ground, where they're probably pointing at one of the stinky onions. And the Indians are looking at each other going, I don't know. It looks like he's pointing at the stinky onion. It's Chicago. It's called Chicago. And they went, we shall call the place Chicago. And of course, it just means stinky onion.
Yeah, I still think Chicago came out ahead of Des Moines.
You're right. Yes. What do your French friends say when they see that city? They got to go.
No, it doesn't mean that in French. I mean, I assumed for years, and so did a lot of other people, it means monks. It's like a moine is a monk. And it's like, but maybe they were like, there was a rock shaped like that, like a monk or something. Only now do we know the truth.
That is so great.
It was apparently like an insult, like for the tribe who lived there.
But when I think about, I've been thinking about when Ted texted me about being on the show and about the topic. I love immersing myself in the historical moment. What was that like? One is like the Rubicon. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, people, I don't know if they're aware, first off, crossing the Rubicon has, of course, become a cliche. It means you cross the line of no return. But the Rubicon in Italy is a creek. I mean, it's literally something you can walk your horses across. It was made at the border that if you brought your forces into there, you were then a treason. You were treason against the Republic of Rome, which of course he was. The other thing, have you ever seen a show? It was not good. called The Crossing. It was about George Washington's crossing of the Delaware River.
No.
And they actually portray it really well because every member of his staff went behind his back. Many of them said, "This is friggin' bananas. Is he crack? We're going to attack the Prussians." I mean, the Prussians were such badasses that the British, not known for their kindness to foreigners, went, "Oh yeah, these guys are assholes. These guys treat people like crap. Don't." But they fight like crazy. So we're going, and Washington's going, we're going to sneak attack where they're going to be drunk, they're going to be hungover and fat.
And it was Christmas night, right?
So they had the
and
Christmas
gentlemen
feast.
did not fight on Christian holidays.
There's that, but it also, Washington was right. They were hungover and fat and lazy, and they came running into the camp. We wouldn't be the United States. We would be part of the Commonwealth.
But just think about, it's part of our foundational lore that we were assholes. We cheated, and we were. Just think about how that worked out. By all objective standards, we were paying the lowest taxes in the British Empire. We were being completely subsidized, and instead of being grateful, we were like fuck you. We pay the low taxes we pay are too high. We want the whole schmear to ourselves, and then we're like jacking up the local constables like while they're sleeping, and like instead of meeting in the field of battle like proper gentlemen.
And they
it
were
really
tarring
goes to like basically might makes right. Whatever works.
They were tarring feathering the tax collectors, which if you've ever seen the miniseries, John Adams actually showed what that was like, because it sounds like it's kind of, because we use it now, it's kind of cute.
Kind of fun.
Tar and feathering was horrific.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Robbie. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no, you're good. Just kind of what Ted just talking about, the rules of war. Francis Marion, who could arguably be argued as the father of American Special Forces, said, no, we are going to fight like the Indians. We are going to hunt them down. We are going to kill every redcoat that we find. And in a lot of ways, he invented the concept of terror warfare. And that's what he did.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also part of that whole, we always fight the last war. The military does. And so in the Civil War, you had, there's a bunch of guys with rifles. Let's walk towards them. Yeah, okay. Rifled rifles, hence the name. It was, they always fight the last war. So when the Americans start to do the guerrilla actions that Ted described, you're absolutely right. And that's what, we won one major battle, Yorktown. That's it.
And that never would have worked without the French fleet,
Of course, because you had to block their exits. That's what got, but in terms of the Civil War, the Revolution, we would never have won in the conventional way of we shall march together as men, we shall parley in the middle and set the rules of conflagration, and then we shall retreat, and then our men shall, henceforth move forward to each other. But because the weaponry had changed, it wasn't pikes and swords; it was rifles. It wasn't rifles; it was guns, it was muskets. But they were still, which if you've ever fired a musket, is hilarious because. I know Robbie has. If you've ever aimed at something and hit it with a musket, the gods were on your side, because that's not happened in reality. Because it's a ball and it's not rifled, so it goes zip, zip.
Yeah, people in the Civil War reported being able to see them.
I don't know if you could see. You heard it because the velocity is not.
Some people
fast.
could see them.
Okay, before it hit them.
Maybe not, but I think you could see it like from the right angle. You could see them.
Could you see that, Robbie? I would defer to you to firearm.
They're big, right? The balls were big.
Yeah,
cannons. Yes, you're right. You're right, because the illustrators showed them.
Well, because what it is that the Union Army, they actually used rifled rounds, whereas the Confederates used kind of like almost like a mini ball. So Confederate rounds were basically like a big old ball bearing. I've actually got some. And so they would shoot those out and they would tumble. So the Confederates all times used moved the muskets because they didn't have a standing army. It was a militia army.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Union Army, they actually used rifled rounds with an actual 54 caliber round, and they were just devastating.
They look like little missiles.
The Confederates could outshoot the Northern Army, but the Northern Army had the advantage of just better technology, and just over time that told the tale. Especially when the Union Army came out with the Spencers, the repeating, the semiotic rifles, first time ever used in war. That made a big difference. And one thing to talk about, the rules of war. The first Thanksgiving proclamation was during the siege of Petersburg by Grant. Well, when that went out, when Lee heard about it, he ordered the Confederate Army not to fire in observance of Thanksgiving, this day of giving thanks to God. And the Union, Grant, he just kept pummeling them with cannons. Lee actually put a standing order saying, if you return fire, I will have you hung. You will not do this. We will fight like gentlemen. You will not shoot back.
And that worked out. How did that work out for them?
Well, the thing is, I think that, here's the thing, right? I think that by 1864,
it was over.
Everyone knew that there was a butcher's bill still to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
But Lee knew, for example, he advocated for a quick war. Don't try to defend everything. Go north, strike the North like a cobra, win a political victory. Jefferson Davis said no. And Jefferson Davis, in a lot of ways, for the Confederacy, was kind of like what Hitler was for Germany. He was the best friend that the Union Army had, because he was fighting the last war. Even though Lee was saying, we cannot win a war of attrition, we will be strangled to death. We will be destroyed. And in April 1865, most people don't know this. After Appomattox, the Confederates technically won Appomattox, that they beat the Union back. But Lee was at the point just like, this is unsustainable. This is untenable, based on what Ukraine is now.
Yeah. Or World War I from the German side. The Germans were so confused after the war because they were like, well, how did we lose? The whole war was fought on the enemy's side.
Not one battle in Germany.
Jefferson Davis, he ordered Lee to take the Army of Western Virginia after Richmond fell to fight a guerrilla war, a la Francis Marion.
Mm-hmm.
Lee defied the president of the Confederate States. He surrendered. He committed an act of treason against the Confederacy, disobeying the president that he was in allegiance to. And Jefferson Davis was enraged and said, how dare this man rescind an order that I had given? And the response that Lee gave was like 300,000 men is enough. It's over.
Yeah. At that point, things have just fallen apart. I mean, you know, at that point, you're like Admiral Donitz, the guy who took over the Nazi government after the suicide of Hitler, and ran Germany for a week, or actually like a month, right? And and basically, it was just kind of like, well, at a certain point, it's like, this is all falling apart. We all know which way. We know which direction it's going. Yeah, there's some. We can. The details will be finagled, but we know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, one of the
quick story. One of my.
Go ahead. It is like Ukraine.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say one of my favorite stories, military stories of all time, comes from the Civil War, and it's a little known story. The Confederacy was having enormous success, obviously, the first couple of years of the war, and I mean it's really admirable and pretty amazing. And they got into their heads that they were going to have the Confederacy stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Yeah. So they start marching out of Texas. They go into New Mexico. These are all territories of the United States at that point. And there's like a fort with like 3 guys who just hate it there. And then the Confederates show up in force and take over. So they take over the forts in New Mexico. They move into southern Arizona and take over Tucson. They move up. Phoenix was nothing then. They came through and they were starting to move towards the border.
Was this an idea like we just want some wins, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, devastating. Think about it. The Confederacy then was winning over territories, Union territories, and B, it would have stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. That's a pretty strong statement.
By the way, this campaign is documented in a lot of Westerns, right? Like this.
Yes, well,
a lot of Westerns where you see fighting in the Southwest, and you're like, if you don't know your history, you're like, what are you guys doing out
it wasn't
here?
long, but by the time they got to the border with California, they see this way off in the distance. Their scouts see a ragtag group of trappers, miners, and seafaring men are marching towards them. And the Confederate troops are going, this is great. They're joining us to go to the sea. This is awesome. And these guys who were badass motherfuckers, they were just the baddest guys, start wailing on the Confederates, saying, we're for the Union. We're part of the Union. Especially California, the Union was very good to them. And they just beat the shit out of the Confederate Army and pushed them all the way back to Texas. I mean, it's a remarkable, I just love the idea, the image of all the troops, all of the Confederate officers say, they're here to join the cause. God bless those boys. What are they doing?
Not so much.
Right.
Yep. So my granddaddy's granddaddy, he actually served under Stonewall Jackson. He was a part of the Stonewall Brigade.
Wow. Really?
And so, we still have his diary. And so and so my family is from what's now West Virginia. It was Western Virginia. Then they were just outside Chet Mountain, had a little farm.
Okay.
Long story short, he said that before battle, Stonewall Jackson, he would pray every night. He'd pray all night long. And so whenever he would come out, it's like his eyes just glue. That's one of his nicknames is kind of like this gray light. And Jackson was a devout Christian, but most of his battles he fought on Sundays, almost always. And no one really knows if that was by design or just how it happened, but that's just how it was. And where I'm going with this is like one of the things that he believed, because after Jackson died, they needed more cavalrymen, so he ended up serving under Jeb Stuart. And so, like I said, I saw that my grandfather, I guess my great granddad, he never surrendered. And so it's kind of neat the way the history is, because the story I'm retelling is within living memory of my grandfather. So the stories that he was told is what he told me. And he said it was just, it was so intense that when the Army of Northern Virginia surrendered, so when they went to Union camps, because Grant gave extremely generous terms to the Confederate Army, and he remembered asking this one captain was asked by a private, said, "Why were you going to arrest the Confederates for treason?" Or not a captain, sorry, a congressman from D.C. He said, "No, because if you did, my own army would rebel." Because Lee was held in such high esteem, just for the fight that they put on. And so after the war, he went home because he sent his family down to this little place called Atlanta to say we'd be safe from the war. When he got home, when he got back, he found that his wife and his three sons had all been hung by the Union troops.
Hung?
And so he said, "Fuck this." He kept fighting for like another 3 years as a guerrilla. So, I mean, he joined the original Klan, back when they were hunting down carpetbaggers and bluebellies, before they got all crazy about race. And he just never surrendered. His brother fought for the Union. Well, this one Christmas Day, he went home to see his family on the family farm. He saw his brother there. He pulled a gun. He was going to blow his brother away right there in the yard of the family farm. And their mama came out and started screaming and said, "No, don't." Yo, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, like, I'm echoing what you said. Wait
till after dinner.
So the mom was, she was just like, screaming, started crying. And the dad, this is all in the diary. And his dad came out. He said, "Son, the war is over. Killing your brother is not going to bring your wife back."
This is like, it's like that crazy situation with the Japanese soldier in the South Pacific who surrendered in 1971. It's totally insane. By the way, I saw a very cool movie only released in France about it. It's a French movie, highly recommended. You could find it. It basically shows the whole thing from his point of view. He doesn't talk at all until finally he's tracked down by his former commanding officer, because basically some researcher found out that guy was like in the islands and like stealing and ambushing, stealing food from people, ambushing people, and they were like, oh my God, it's like a Japanese fucking soldier 35 years after the end of the war. And then they were like, and basically they were like, had a loudspeaker, and they're like, come out, the war's over. And basically he didn't believe them, and they were like, the only way we're going to do this is so they found his former commanding officer, brought him from Tokyo, and then he was like, like, I order you, like to surrender, and the war's over. And he was like,
this was in the 70s, correct?
71, I think.
Yeah, 71. I was going to say 71. Wow.
And they gave him a massive parade in Tokyo, the
military
honor parade.
If he was in your local, let's say he was in the, I don't know, this a high rise in New York,
Central Park,
or in Montana somewhere, you'd kind of think it was charming. You'd kind of like every time you saw him, you'd surrender.
No, but he was shooting people and stuff.
Oh well, that's no good.
It's a problem.
Yeah, it's because my granddaddy's granddaddy. Like I said, I'm named after him. His name is Robert Fulton. That's my name. And so I'm named after him. And for him, it wasn't that the war was over. For him, it was all about revenge.
Right.
Because they took his the Yankees took his family from him. He was going to take Yankees away from their family too. And long story short, when he got tired of the bushwhacking life, he went down to Mobile, Alabama, got remarried, and thus came me.
Oh,
gotcha. All right.
Thank goodness he did that.
Yep.
Yes. So, well, living well is the best revenge. So we said we promised we would share our favorite stories, and we shared some stories. And I think we should each do a favorite story, and then like call it a day here. I wrote about this thing because it's relevant to this episode of history. It's which Scott I think knows about. Robby, you might know it too. I wrote about it for the Wall Street Journal, but they kind of screwed up, and it's probably going to just be syndicated next week. But it was my senior thesis in college, and the press conference a week ago between Zelensky and Trump, in which Trump was deemed to have insulted Zelensky and treated him very badly. Although for people who think that, I strongly recommend that you go look at the whole thing, the whole hour-long appearance. It gives you a very different impression of that. But basically, of a European ally being super irritating to an American president who's sponsoring and paying for him. And this has been characterized as a completely unprecedented event. That's not true. And FDR during World War II absolutely had a similar, very contentious relationship with Charles de Gaulle, who was the head of the Free French. And de Gaulle was a one-star general who kind of a relatively minor figure, but that's all there really was, who fled. All the rest of the high-ranking officials either fled or surrendered to the Germans and formed the Vichy puppet government. So he went to London, went on the radio, went on the BBC and asked Frenchmen to join him in London, to sneak out of occupied France and join him and form an army with a view toward eventually returning to reinvade their homeland at the side of the Allies. That's what the Free French were. But de Gaulle, like Zelensky, was very irritating to FDR.
Oh God!
FDR thought the French were like, you guys are defeated, you guys rolled over, and I always thought you guys were a weakling country, and this just confirmed my point. And who the hell are you? And anyway, nobody voted for you, right? Like Zelensky, like you're not elected, you're not democratic. You just want to establish one-party rule. You're a dictator in training. That's a quote of what FDR said about de Gaulle. And so the Roosevelt administration, rather than diplomatically recognize de Gaulle as the head of the exiled French government, like all the other European governments were in London, right? There was the Dutch government in exile, the Belgian government in exile, and so on. The FDR didn't do that. He gave full diplomatic recognition to the Vichy Nazi regime.
Did he really?
Yeah, until late 1942, when Vichy cut it off because they basically ceased to be, because the Allies had landed in North Africa, and then to join them, the Nazis invaded what was called the Free Zone, the Vichy Zone. So at that point, the relationship was severed, not severed by the Americans. And in the run up to World War II, to D-Day, Roosevelt was like, don't involve the Free French. They're not going to be part of the landing. We're going to occupy France like an enemy nation, like fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. It's Vichy is an enemy state, and we're going to occupy them accordingly. Like in the same way that Trump wants Ukraine to pay for the price of its own liberation by turning over rare earth materials, he wanted France to pay for the price of its own liberation. So at D-Day, when American troops landed at Normandy, their pockets were full of French francs. They weren't real French francs. They were francs that were printed at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. And they didn't say République Française. They just said France. And the idea was that we were going to show up and give them to French shopkeepers. And then when everything's settled, well, who does everybody look to make good on them? France, not the U.S. So basically, to finance every time, like if an Allied soldier walked into a bistro and had lunch and ordered a couple of bottles of wine, that was all going to be on de Gaulle, not on FDR, right? So that's how that was going to all work out.
That's devious.
It's sketchy, right?
It really is.
and so like, de Gaulle was furious. He goes on the air and says, this is counterfeit money. Do not accept it. FDR hears about it. He's pissed. Meanwhile, caught in between is Churchill and Eisenhower. Eisenhower is planning Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion. And he's like, okay, FDR is crazy. Unless you want a communist takeover, it's de Gaulle or nobody. He's going to be the next president of France. And like, we need the intel about like the French coastline. And we need people who are going to take over each little town hall as we take over. We want that to be them. Anyway, this wasn't settled fully. So the American troops land at D-Day. We all think of this as a heroic thing. They're all greeted as liberators by the French population. That's pretty much true. But behind the scenes, things are complicated. So the first few towns to be liberated are Caen and Cherbourg. And immediately upon landing, FDR's allied military governors, who are there to impose martial law and run roughshod over the French. And by the way, they're going to capture all of the French colonies and make them American. Sound like Trump, right? It's like, so he wants to take over Madagascar, all the African colonies, Guadeloupe, all those places. And so anyway, these are the AMGOT assholes, Allied Military Government of Occupied Territories. They're racing for the town hall. Meanwhile, Eisenhower sneaks the Free French on board the ships. And then those guys, de Gaulle's guys, are running for this is the committee, the CFLN, the French Committee of National Liberation. Then there's communist and socialist mayors who are trying to do a communist takeover of France. They're there with the hammer and sickle. They're racing to the town halls. And at the same time, there's the Vichy mayor who's still there and refusing to leave. So in these town halls, sometimes there were 4 or 5 rival mayors, each taking one floor in the office.
Oh, God.
And their troops are exchanging fire in the stairwells. This goes on for several weeks. And finally, the reports start coming back that de Gaulle shows up. He's being greeted, with great enthusiasm by the French population. The press was completely in the tank for de Gaulle, much like the press is completely in the tank for Zelensky. And they were like, they couldn't understand. They knew about this policy. They were trying to quash it too. It's in the same way that you're seeing the press try to, push for Zelensky against Trump. And so by the time France is liberated Paris is liberated August 25th, 1944, it's like the truth has been swept under the rug. But even so, FDR refused to acknowledge de Gaulle as the president of France until November of 1944. Way, like probably a good year or two later than he should have. So, it's kind of like the French all know this story. And it's a big, and de Gaulle always talked about it. And the French, it's one of the roots of post-war anti-Americanism. Like if you had a big booger in your cafe au lait, that might be why in 1960. So, but Americans never found out about this story.
So, Robby, your favorite history, or I can go, your call.
You go ahead and go, because I talked a lot so far.
Well, we've had for those of you who've watched me here or watch us on our podcast or listen to the podcast or whatever, I'm a big U.S. President wonk. And I'm going to focus on the 20th century because there's 3 quick stories that, and they get progressively duller. So stay with me.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. The first one is Warren G. Harding, who would, again, put yourself in place. Let's say you are the Secretary of War, which is what it was called back then. And the president excuses himself so he can go to a broom closet. I'm not making this up, and have sex with his mistress. Yeah. That's
Mr. Clinton. What are you doing?
Frankly, well, it kept us out of a lot of stuff. Not to mention there was after the election of 1920, there was a slight recession, and it stayed slight because Warren G. Harding took the Scott Stantis tack. He did nothing. He let it happen. He said, this is a normal fluctuation. We're coming out of a war production. We're coming out of Spanish flu, and we're coming out of, other economic factors. And he didn't do anything. And it was a very shallow recession. It was a shallow recession because he was stooping his mistress in a broom closet. That's number one. Number two, I said these are going to get duller, is Teddy Roosevelt. I love this story. President of the United States. Stay with me, boys. President of the United States says, I'm going out west. I'll get back to you in about a month. He literally he's doing the cowboy thing, right? He's just goes off into the Wild West, and no one knows where he is.
That's where set up Yellowstone, wasn't it? As the first.
Yeah, that's part of that trip. Yes, but for a month, can you imagine the president just disappearing for a month? That would be great, quite frankly. But and talk about a missing president. Here's my number one story of the 20th century American presidents, and it's Calvin Coolidge. So you take your Adderall and try to stay up, kids, because this is good. But every morning after he ascended to the presidency, there's 2 stories. One is very touching. One is very practical. I'll tell the practical one first. He would sit down with his Secretary of Treasury every morning, and for an hour to an hour and a half, they go through the budget line by line. That is, how many stamps is the Department of Commerce using? And it sounds like, I can't tell you how many people I've told this to who said, I don't want my president wasting their time on things like that. And my response is, that is precisely what I want the president to be doing. Yes. And in fact, Calvin Coolidge paid for, yeah, you can do this, paid for a tax cut with the savings he and his Secretary of Treasury found. The second one, and the most moving moment, I think, of almost any presidency, second to none, maybe Lincoln, but Calvin Coolidge becomes president of the United States. His family moves in. He is extremely close to his family and his kids. His sons are playing tennis on the tennis court that Roosevelt had put in at the White House. He gets a blister. The blister pops, gets infected, becomes septic, and the kid dies at 16 years old.
That's crazy.
The Coolidges put the body, the visitation was in the ballroom in the White House. And the Secret Service is walking around. I'm sorry, I'm going to get misty just talking about this. The Secret Service is, of course, patrolling the house. And they hear something coming from the ballroom. And they go in, and it's President Coolidge, who has opened up the coffin of his son and is stroking his hair. Yep. And for those of us who are parents, sorry, it gets to me now. We know exactly what he was feeling. And he said later, he says, if that was the price of the presidency, I wish I had never ascended to it. Mm-hmm. Yep. Those are those moments that I think define those characters and kind of redefine.
And the lesson here is always wash yourself when you pop your blister.
Yes, there's that. Wait, 16. Have you seen? Do you remember? I mean, we have kids. Our 16-year-old socks. Good God! Good God! That's where the plagues come from. It's 16-year-old boys' socks and underwear.
They're so like musky and weird.
They're gross. My sons would have friends spend the night without telling us, by the way. So it's always a surprise when you're walking through the house and there's a 17-year-old asleep on your couch. But we ceded the territory of our downstairs to our sons, and when they'd have someone, you could walk down. You have to walk.
It was
down
like your dog. It was like your Crimea.
Exactly. Well, we were hoping it would hold the peace. It didn't, but for a while. But you're walking down, and halfway down the stairs, you could smell the boy smell. Boys
Oof.
just have a smell, and
They
so,
do.
so those are my
boy's
three.
15, so I understand.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. When your kids become teenagers and the pheromones and the perspiration, and all that
They
crap.
stink.
Holy crap! Oh my God! All of a sudden, you're sitting next to him at dinner. You're going, "What the hell is that?"
And they don't really
Dude.
bing often enough. So there's that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have a okay. I'm sorry.
Or they don't bing
Everything's a
properly.
story. But
No, keep going.
my son would come in and we'd go, hey, did you take a bath? Yes. No, you didn't. Go take a bath. You'd hear the bath water run. You'd hear him get. You'd hear the bath water run. That's all
Did
you
you
hear.
soap? Did you soap?
No, exactly. He'd come back in and said, "Did you actually get in the tub?" No. Go get in the tub. So he'd go get, and you'd hear him splashing in the tub, and then he'd get out and dry off in like literally 48 seconds.
Mhm.
He'd come back in. And to Robbie's point, did you use soap? He'd go back in, and he'd come back out, and he'd say, "Did you wash the soap off?" Because he had this coat. He'd go, "Oh," and he'd go back and take that off. That didn't, and guys, it happened more than once.
Yeah.
Such creatures.
So,
Yeah,
Robbie,
no,
what's your
they
history
are.
story? We
We got to wrap it up because
Yeah.
Scott and I we're doing our own podcast in like 45 minutes.
Oh, I'll be there and watching then.
Yeah, you will.
Because what if I had to pick one, I'd have to say it was at the onset of the war, Northern Aggression. Lee was called the Queen of Spades, and so because what he was doing is that he was preparing for the war they're going to be fighting, as opposed to the last war. Long story short, after Fort Sumter got attacked, Lee was brought into a meeting, and they're talking about Jefferson Davis was talking about how Winfield Scott was a traitor to the South because he's a Virginian, and he stayed with the Union. And this is on the minutes of the records, and this is one of the reasons why it's such a shame that Americans don't know their history and start tearing down statues of this man. Lee said, and this is in the minutes, Lee said that slavery is an evil. It is a stain on the nation, and if being opposed to secession does not make you a traitor, because I'm opposed to it too. And then Jefferson Davis said, "Well, then, sir, why are you here? I know that Lincoln offered you command of the army." And Lee said, "Because I could not draw my sword against my home and my family."
Yeah.
And so the fact that so many Americans are ignorant of this man, and they call him a traitor, they call him a Nazi, everything else, whatever. Ulysses S. Grant owned slaves. Lee, when he inherited
He
his
owned one
slaves,
slave for a short
Yep.
period of time and got rid
Yep.
of him. It was a
Correct.
gift.
Yep. And
I'm
so
not sure how you wrap it, but
and then Lee, after he inherited his slaves, after his father-in-law died, he emancipated his in 1863. So I mean, it's just people forget history. And one of the things that after the war ended is that Lee was always going to D.C. He was a part of the reconciliation efforts between the North and the South. And Lee was just like, don't build monuments, don't build memorials, don't build any of those things. All it's going to do is just cause problems.
which they didn't until the upswing, since Reconstruction, the end of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And then you had this just the
lost cause.
And yeah, which is bullshit, of course. And I would argue that traitorism is he went to West Point, he and took an oath and defied it. And that to me has always been stuck in my craw, because I too respect Robert E. Lee. I think he was an extraordinary individual, clearly a genius general.
Yeah.
Stonewall Jackson, if Stonewall Jackson had not been killed, they would have won Gettysburg, because he wouldn't have done Pickett's charge. He was the only man who could have convinced Lee not to do that. And I think leaving with a draw, and the fact that Meade didn't pursue, which was again another boneheaded Union mistake. Yeah. But Robert E. Lee was, and I've read a number of books about him, obviously, because he's really is an extraordinary human being. I still have trouble with men who attended West Point, took the oath to the United States, and then broke that oath. I still have difficulty with that. But to your point, Robbie, my wife, who hates me mentioning this, but she was born and raised in California. And she said if the federal government invaded California, she would have gone out. She would, no matter where she lived, she would have gone back and fought for California.
Well, it's your home.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that modern day Americans have a hard time understanding this. The country back then was, a lot of ways, it was kind of like Greece was in the days of the city states. Like,
yes,
the concept was that the United States, like if you look at the documentation, everybody said these United States is a federal union of sovereign states, and your loyalty was to your state. And and the 9th and 10th amendments to the Constitution both say that powers are not given to the federal government, are reserved to the states and to their people. The founders said that was so important that
it's the 10th goddamn amendment. Yes.
I agree, but I mean that's how we look at it now. But back then, though, they actually took it seriously.
Yeah.
And so, when Lee was offered command, by Lincoln to command the Union Army, Lee was like, he refused to. I cannot imagine ever living to see a day where an American president would invade his own country. And so, I mean, he was very conflicted. One of the things he said is that his greatest regret was ever having a military education.
Guys, we got to leave that there. Scott and I are going to be back on the air live in 40 minutes doing the DMZ America podcast at
we need to do this again one day.
Eastern time. Definitely. History's fun. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Scott Stantis, for joining us. Scott is the editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune and the contributor to Center Clip, winner of the Sigma Delta Chi Journalism Award, and co-host of the DMZ America podcast with the aforementioned me. All right, so with that, Scott, thanks again. See you in a bit.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Robby.
Bye. No, thank you.
And thanks, Robby, for your support and moderating the chat. Please subscribe. Substitute on Rumble at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Please subscribe and support the show on YouTube as well. And just remember, if you want things to keep going on the internet, you have to pay for them. We are no exception here whatsoever. So please subscribe, follow us on X and all that stuff. Generally speaking, help us support independent news and content creation. And thanks, everyone, for everything. You guys are all awesome. Bye, Robby.
Especially those of you who are still awake.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.